Hey everyone, we're gonna wait for a couple of minutes for some people to join, and then yeah, we'll start in 2 minutes. See you soon. Hey everyone, we are ready to start. So thank you so much for joining us this morning, or for whoever it is in the evening. Thanks so much for making the time. And today my wonderful guest is Heather, who is a senior QA engineer at Lyft. Hey Heather, welcome.
Hello. Thank you.
Awesome to see you here. And today we're going to talk about how Lyft drives QA at scale, and how it really gives them a competitive advantage in such a fast-growing space. And on the other hand, I wanted to also mention that today we're going to have a couple of polls going around. So if you see a poll popping up on your window, then please give us your answer as well, so we can see the results. And also feel free to ask questions anytime during the webinar. We're going to try to take in as many questions as possible. We're not sure if we can take all of them, but at least we can see them and answer them after the webinar as well. And also feel free to tweet questions in Twitter at Testlio handle, because we have a person here who is monitoring all of the questions. And so yeah, I think we're ready to kick this off. So if any of you don't know me, then I'm actually the CEO and founder of Testlio, and I started Testlio in the end of 2012 with my co-founder Marco. And yeah, so for the past 4 years, we've been building Testlio, and it's been a really exciting times for us. And today we have the opportunity to work with Lyft, and if any of you doesn't know what Lyft does, then they're one of the biggest players in the ride-sharing space. So it's really essential to the lives of millions of people on a daily basis. And in this session today, Heather will present us the key aspects of building highly scalable QA in an organization like Lyft. So Heather, let's kick it off, or what? So my first question, I think it would be good for the audience to get to know you a little bit. So maybe you can give us a little bit about yourself, and we can go from there.
Yeah. So my name's Heather. I am a QA engineer at Lyft. I've been here now for about 2 years. I started my career as an intern in QA at a company called Plaxo when I was finishing college. And while upon graduating, Plaxo was acquired by Comcast, and I was offered a full-time job. And so started my career at Comcast as a QA engineer. and worked on their web platform originally, and eventually moved into their mobile and set-top box applications. And throughout the years, became a QA lead. Eventually became a QA manager while I was there. And I was a manager there for about 2.5 years, and decided that set-top boxes are great, but kind of want to move back into a mobile space. And that was right when I decided to apply to Lyft, and it was a great interview, great space, and been here ever since.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the quick introduction. But can you give us more context on Lyft? Like we all know what Lyft does,
Oh,
but
yeah.
can you tell us more about like working there and actually like the ride sharing space itself?
Yeah, I was employee about 400 when I first joined 2 years ago, and now we've grown to over 1,600. And as of the end of Q1 earlier this year, we've had over 70 billion rides. I'm sorry, not billion, 70 million. But we are growing fast, and things keep changing, but it's a good pace. We definitely enjoy all the changes that come about. And sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a moment. We're talking about we're going pretty fast. Yeah.
And why do you think why customer experience is important at Lyft? Like why do you value it so much?
Well, it's all about our users. Some of our users on the Lyft platform use it as a way of life, and it's our duty to kind of exhaust all our options when it comes to testing and what we want to provide for them. And listening to customer feedback and what our users have to say about our platform and the changes we make is very important for us, since it's all about them.
Very cool. Can you also share some of the cool things that you guys do at Lyft? Like, do you have like some mentorship or like skill sharing classes, like about that?
We do. That's part of our way of life at Lyft is to have a lot of external or a lot of programs that kind of thrive for folks to become better and want to improve on themselves. We have the mentorship program, which I'm a part of. We have a skill sharing. We do brown bags all the time at Lyft on recent changes we made or new tools we built. And so we always look to provide open space and safe space for our employees to talk to, wanting to see how they can get better.
Very exciting. So since so you joined Lyft about 2 years ago as a QA person, like has your role changed over the time when you've grown from like to 1,500 employees over the past 2 years?
Yeah, it definitely helps to have been in a lead management role before. So when we have new employees come in, and we were averaging quite a few new employees every week, I was able to really help come in and show them how Lyft works, and I've definitely grown into more of a lead role since then. And instead of diving into the weeds like I used to when I first started, I'm kind of the one helping with providing phones, showing folks what to do, and more of like showing how to do tasks and delegate in some ways. And and everyone else gets to have all the fun and test every day.
Very exciting. So yeah, now that we're talking a little bit that you shared some details about your role and the team, maybe we can jump into like talking about like the organizational structure at Lyft and like the way QA is integrated into the entire into entire teams, and how you really build quality into your product from the bottom up.
Yes, so QA is embedded into engineering. We all report to engineering managers. We are no longer the siloed test team. We share our knowledge with developers, and we work closely with them and product. And we kind of work with developers as they create new features, and we strive to make sure that whatever is created or what we want to go into a release, that it is testable. and we can verify before releasing on prod that it does work, and very much encouraging to not test on production before doing a release.
So yeah, I think it's like a very like a new way of thinking as well, like how you should put quality into your product from day one, right? And yeah, I think it's very forward thinking that quality should be everyone's responsibility in the team. It's not just like the QA and the testers who are like the wall in between like the release and like the team, but it should be like everyone's responsibility in making quality products, right?
Absolutely.
And yeah, but how does your team, for example, look like? How many people do you have in the team, and what are the high-level goals that you've set for your team?
Yeah. Is it from both the QA team and the development team?
Yeah.
Or we work really closely, so
Yeah.
yeah. I think the ratio right now is 1 to 5, 1 QA to 5 developers, depending on what team you're on. And our goal, we always have quarterly goals we aim to achieve, and that's our focus. And the big thing is just to make sure, like, whatever we have planned in the pipeline, that we have the appropriate test practices in place, that we know how are we going to test this, how are we going to release it, and how, in terms of, we work closely with product as well on that, and we do kind of look to see and start planning at least 2 weeks in advance on how everything's going to look and what our strategy is for in terms of development, testing, and releasing it.
And so, how often do you release at Lyft? Like, how often?
We have weekly releases for both iOS and Android. And with the recently released driver app, we now do about 4 apps a week for releases.
And was the cycle a bit longer when you started at Lyft, or not?
It's been a roller coaster. When I first joined, we did have weekly releases, and the app was much smaller back then. And come in 2016, we actually did some really cool projects, and we were moving so fast, and we still were we had way more engineers than testers, and I think the release process was starting to get a little chaotic, and we moved to a 2-week schedule for a bit. And we also wanted to let our app soak a little bit more in beta. We have a beta program, which I think I'll talk about in a few minutes. But we decided that 2 weeks was still too slow after a trial run of that, and then at the beginning of this year we moved back to weekly releases.
Very cool. So, when talking about the challenges that the QA is facing at Lyft, like, and and considering it's such a fast growing environment, like, what are some of the key challenges of doing QA in your organization?
Yeah, with a fast-growing company and weekly releases, scalability is always the top problem. As I said, the ratio is still pretty small compared to QA and engineers, and it's always kind of prioritizing like what we have time to make sure it has high quality, or we want to keep releasing a high quality product every week, but we know it's a challenge at times trying to make sure all our testing is done prior to a release. And to help with that, we do have the beta program and also our alpha program, which we have all of engineering on, to help with making sure that no one does any unchecked changes. We have an alpha build that's built about every 2 to 3 days, and the only way us Lyft employees or for engineering can use our Lyft credits is to use the alpha app to make sure that we eat our dog food and the app works before cutting it off to beta. And our beta release is also every week, and we have an external beta team that we have a Facebook group we set up with. And it's great because we have our drivers on that program, and so we get a lot of feedback from our drivers on what features they like, what they don't like, or heaven forbid if there is a bug that is exposed on beta. And so that definitely helps with in terms of scaling and for to accommodate with testing, and we do any other fixes that must be taken care of on beta before we submit to Apple or Google.
Very exciting. I wanted to let everyone know that we're putting up a poll. What's the greatest challenge your organization faces in doing high quality QA? So if you can insert your answers, that would be really, really wonderful. But yeah, Heather, in terms of like talking about like scale and speed, like you always want to release as fast as possible because our users are becoming more and more demanding in terms of like the features and everything. So how do you like prioritize and how do you make the decisions on in terms of like what to fix and what can we skip? So can you give us like some context on terms of the scale of the things as well?
Yeah, we definitely do bug triage and sprint planning with all our teams on a weekly basis. And for product, we actually have longer roadmaps our product has longer roadmaps for what they want to accomplish on for the quarter, but they still have actually, in terms of what to prioritize, product has about a bi-weekly meeting with one of our co-founders, Logan.
That's exciting.
Yeah, Logan's a big product guy. So product will do a big all hands with him and go over what they're planning for the next couple of weeks or for the month. And based on feedback, Logan will say like, oh, let's prioritize this. This sounds like a great feature. Let's get this out the door. And that kind of does help. It's good to know that we have one of our top execs kind of looking in to see what is good, what doesn't seem good, and it does help drive decision and prioritize what we should focus on.
That's exciting. So what are the other things that like help you make these weekly releases, for example, and like especially like when we're talking about speed here?
Yeah, so Testlio helps with that. We do have to run regression testing every week and smoke testing before releasing to the app stores. And part of that requirement for a weekly release is we have to finish all testing within 24 hours. And Testlio has been great to kind of help to make sure that gets done, and we can get that and make sure all the bugs are found or all the tests passed. We are definitely still hiring more in-house QA to help with new teams being formed and to make sure they are accounting for testing and testability. And of course, we have automation up and running. We definitely had to have an upfront cost when we were creating the driver app. A lot of our automation broke, and we couldn't use it when we were in that transition of having the driver app. And Testlio definitely helped in that part where, for short-term costs, we had manual testing for a good portion of our testing during that time, while we let automation and the team build up the frameworks to accommodate a new app. And it's definitely about that, like the cost and balance, and it was nice to have that upfront cost and everyone willing to have Testlio and more manual testing to take care of that until we had a framework that we can use that would be very powerful later on. And plus, when we had our weekly releases, and just slowly make that transition back from manual testing to automation, and we're getting there. But yeah, definitely a lot of upfront cost at the beginning.
Very cool. So and how do you handle like really, really big changes in the app? Like how much do you plan ahead for like big releases? Like you're talking a lot about like the driver app. Can you share more details into this area as well?
Driver app is a great example that required a lot of planning and buffer time as well in case anything was to go wrong. We started that project, I would say, first started planning it around November of last year, and I think it finally started going into development about January, February, and it was definitely all about planning and coming up with a backup plan in case things didn't go well. And definitely you need to make sure all the teams that have to be there for big changes, they are aware, and if they need to make any accommodations and changes on their end. We have a lot of teams, and sometimes it can be miscommunication can happen if the teams are too siloed, and so for big projects we definitely want to be loud and over communicate and give everyone enough time to plan and make sure that if there's something that they need to have, or that people are relying on their service, that they're ready and they can accommodate for that. So I would say just for bigger projects, just a lot more planning and over communication.
Got it. I don't know, can you like maybe tell us more about like how do you prepare for like bigger events that are happening around the cities? For example, there's Halloween or New Year's Eve. Like how do you do any special planning for these types of events at Lyft as well? Or like,
oh yeah,
you definitely have more requests for drivers these times, for example, right?
yeah. Anytime a holiday lands on a weekend, it's always a big deal. Everybody wants to go out, have fun. San Francisco is definitely a city that represents that. and, but we now actually run load testing pretty often to kind of simulate traffic that we have that comes in on the weekends. Our weekends are much higher in terms of user usage compared to weekdays, and especially for any holidays, it can go up 3 or 4x depending on the holiday. Halloween and New Year's is definitely our biggest nights, and it took a while, but we did build a framework to create the load that we expect, or in case it goes 4 or 5x, we actually run those tests to see how good our platform is in terms of handling that. And if it's not, then we plan in the next sprint what changes need to be done to get to that scale.
Got it. Very exciting. So we actually have the results from the poll as well. And the question was, what's the greatest challenge in an organization that the audience faces in doing high quality QA? And 40% of the audience actually responded that speed, meeting like release deadlines. The second place came scaling, growing QA alongside the product. Then third was testability, like finding the right way to test features, and then was ensuring complete device coverage is also one of the biggest challenges. So I think that would be like I could ask my second question, like my next question in terms of like how do you, like what are the challenges at Lyft regarding testability?
Yeah, definitely some features where you would think could work well in a test environment end up not working. Working with dev and trying to figure out, hey, how do we test this? And if they're not sure, and we kind of just like have to then be forced to test on prod.
And can you like give us examples in terms of situations where something wasn't testable, or you didn't know that something was, that how can you test
it? Not long after I joined, Primetime and Heatmaps weren't working as well on test boxes compared to production, and it was never a good environment to actually test Heatmaps, and I always felt bad for our drivers on that. But and so the only way, so for weekly regression for Heatmaps, the only way we could test it was to check on production at around 5:30 during commute hours and see how Primetime and Heatmaps are working on prod. instead of being able to do that on our own environments. Fortunately, in 2016, we all QA raised a concern and said, if we had a lot of bugs coming in, and there was no way to verify unless it was on production, and it was getting too much, and we finally said we consider this a test blocker if we don't get prime time and heat maps working on in test environments. And I'm very fortunate that at Lyft management takes QA's opinion very seriously, and they fixed it for us when we said it was a test blocker, and now it's testable, and so it works.
Pretty cool. By the way, we got an interesting question. Is there a difference between QA and testing at Lyft, for example?
QA and testing?
Yeah, is there a difference for you at Lyft?
For me, there is a difference. We definitely interchange it at Lyft, and we've gone back and forth on this discussion. Title changes are hard through our employee system, so we just leave it as QA, but definitely, like as you said before, Crystal, quality is everybody's problem. Everybody needs to think about the app in terms of quality and reliability. That's, you could say everybody's a QA then at the company. Versus testing, it's our job to see the limitations and the max for how our app can work. And our goal is to find the weaknesses in our app and testing it and seeing how far we can take it and calling it out where we can. And so it's definitely for testing, our job is to see where Lyft breaks, and in terms of QA, just make sure everyone has a high quality experience.
Absolutely. And one of the key components, like testing for mobile, is devices, right? Like today we have so many different variations of Android devices on the market, like tens of thousands, I think, when you're considering different operating systems and the device screen sizes and everything. And you want to support a lot of them as well. So how many devices does Lyft test for?
Each QA member has about a dozen or so devices, so we have a lot here at Lyft. We also, Teslio helps a lot with devices that we may or may not have, and we have automation that we use to kind of look at other devices. And otherwise, if all physical devices, if we still don't have a set that we need in terms of testing, or a bug report or customer support bug comes in that uses an older device, for example, then we can try to use the emulator simulator to use that as well to verify.
Got it. And is there a difference? Do you prioritize the issues that are coming in from real devices versus simulators or emulators as well?
We definitely have higher priority on bugs exposed on real devices compared to emulators and simulators. There's always that chance that something is not working as expected on a simulator, and so we try to test on real devices if we can. We definitely have there's a certain amount of platforms we support as a company, and we make sure we have all the physical devices for that, and anything that we're about to deprecate or not support anymore due to just the latest OS or device out, then we typically try to use a physical device if available first, or then switch to a similar emulator and see if we can get it that way.
Yeah. So remembering the times when I used to test a lot, and even today when I'm helping our QA managers to build really good plans for our customers, then one of the things that I specifically look into always in terms of how can we prioritize what devices to test on, I always look at the data as well, right? What are the top 50% of the devices that the users are using, right?
So we do have that as well.
Got it.
Yeah. We do look at the monthly usage in terms of devices used on a monthly basis at our reports, and we can definitely prioritize based on, or how do I say this? Based on the monthly numbers, we we definitely look to use which devices are most popular. And then sometimes we also use that data to see which devices we no longer need to put emphasis on in terms of testing compared to other devices that have increased in usage. It definitely fluctuates more between Android versus iOS. I think for that, that one's more important of which OS folks are still using on and not upgrading compared to Android, I would say. But definitely, you have to check. We usually check about every month, couple of months.
Got it. By the way, we have some pretty cool questions coming up from the audience here as well. So I'm gonna ask you, what metrics did you show to upper management C-levels to have them understanding quality is not a release impedance, it's a blocker if it's not done right?
What numbers to execs?
Yeah. What are the metrics that you actually showed to the upper management? In terms, like,
we show the our best defense, or I shouldn't say defense, our best way to show execs what's going on is definitely doing demos of our test builds on actual phones. We'll take videos and do screen recordings of the issues that we're seeing during release testing, and when they see how it looks and what the errors are, and then you think this is going to be on production if you release this, and then everyone backs off. And they're like, okay, do what you have to do, fix it. That's not necessarily an issue for us. Usually, if we say, hey, this is a blocker, everyone, will listen to QA. We are on a very fast-paced release schedule, and everyone understands that if there's something that is critical, blocking, they will listen to us and fix it and see what needs to get done to get fixed, and they'll put a developer on it right away and work with us. I mean, we work very closely with our dev team. We literally sit right next to them, and they understand that, like, if there's an issue, we'll work with them right away.
Got it. We're actually putting up another poll right now, so you might see another poll popping up in your windows. So if you can answer that, that would be very awesome. But yeah, to continue on, like on the device testing as well, like what are some of the learnings related to testing for so many devices and operating systems? Like, for example, when there's a new operating system coming for the iOS devices, like what happens then in your case?
Yeah, this is where monthly numbers definitely help in terms of should we upgrade our test phones or shouldn't we? Most of the time, for having so many devices, I don't recommend upgrading your test phones. You definitely want your phones in that stale state, particularly with much older phones. We've discovered our user base, the types of phones used is a huge range, and we definitely want to have each phone in that old state or unique state. It's much easier to look at to see what is reproducible, and if you can follow exactly what the customer bug that comes in says. As I said, we do have dozens of phones for everyone in QA, and we definitely, only unless we absolutely do not support that OS anymore, will we say, like, okay, it should be fine, upgrade the phone. Otherwise, if we still technically support that phone or OS, for example, iPhone 6 on iOS 9, well, we keep it in that state just in case of, like, any unique bugs that may come up. And just, again, that's to ensure that the app will work in any state.
Yeah, we do the same thing at Testlio. So, for example, in the community, we have a group of testers that keep their devices on older versions. They have older phones, so we can always reach out to them and ask for like specific devices. So it's definitely like a really good thing to have older versions on the devices as well, right?
Well, and of course, everyone knows that once you upgrade, you can't downgrade.
Yep, exactly. So I am that type of person who actually didn't update my operating system. So my co-founder was always like up to the latest OS updates, and I was always like on back to my older version. So yeah, I am a tester from the
Yeah.
heart. Pretty cool. So we touched a little bit about using data for like better user experience as well. So, and I know that Lyft is big on data, right? Like you track everything that your users are doing. So how do you actually use that to make the experience better?
Yeah, so we track all our our data and usage, and we use it to in a way to form experiments for between alpha and the beta app. And which if you ever meet a beta driver, you should definitely give them a fist bump for all the experiments we put them through. But we heavily rely on data and analytics to see, how often does our user request a Lyft? How many buttons do they go through before they're tired of it? How quickly do they select ride types? We use that to see how we can make, efficiencies in terms of that user flow. And, we'll then see if we need to like change this experiment or flow. And yeah, I mean, we definitely run quite a few experiments just to see how, what the traction is with our users, if they like it or don't like it, or if there's a certain feature we want to change, but we're not sure if that's a great flow. We'll run an experiment and evaluate which one works better. And
so how big is your beta group of people right now?
Yeah, I believe we have about 3,000 drivers with
Wow.
2,000 external passengers.
Got it. That's pretty cool. And you engage them in
Yeah.
Facebook?
We have a Facebook group with our beta drivers.
Got it. But yeah, talking about like better data, like what about bug related data? Like how do you collect that and what do you do with it? Like, because I assume considering you have like 3,000 beta users, like they all maybe have different devices and operating systems. Like how do you, what do you do with it? Like once a bug comes in and there's like 3,000 of them.
Yeah, we have we use a bug system for our internal app, our employees for our Alpha app, and that's Instabug, and we use Bugsnag for our crashes to help collect that data. And then we also reach out to our customer support team a lot to see what are very popular issues coming in. And so that's all gets integrated into our Jira, and we look to see if there's a pattern in some of the reports coming in. We definitely keep an eye on all the crashes for our apps. We check that every day to make sure that nothing is blowing up, which, knock on wood, hasn't. But yeah, we definitely have multiple platforms to look at all the issues coming in.
And sorry, and do you have like a team member specifically focused on finding those types of issues from the backlog and or from all of these different types of platforms?
Yeah, we have leads for each platform that we collect bugs from or issues coming in, and they will come together and ping us. I get pinged a lot for a lot of those tickets if there's a common pattern. And yeah, and so we have a release team that also collects all that feedback as well, and they can, if they also take care of the release notes and what's coming in, and so they can tell if there was a bug pattern related to a new feature that just went out, and we're able to trace that pretty quickly and give it to the right team.
That's cool. So, but for newbies here, like if some of us are not so familiar with like using data to our benefit, like how do you start with it? Like what to collect first, and then what to actually do with it?
Yeah, definitely listen to your customer support team. They are the first line of defense, and they get all the feedback from your user base and how they like it or hate the app, and they actually provide some pretty important details on what's working for them and what's not. So I definitely say listen to your customer support team in terms of what to track in terms of data first. And yeah, and then just go from there and provide and build the analytics you'll need moving forward.
And are there any specific tools that you're using for that as well?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we use for customer support, they file Jira tickets to us and they'll message us via Slack
Got it.
for certain bugs, but we also use Bugsnag and Instabug to collect bug reports as well. And then customer support will receive emails from our user base, and sometimes they'll send that our way.
Got it. Very exciting. So we have a lot of questions coming in from the audience. I'm gonna take the chance and ask a couple of these from you, if you might. So, how does your QA team interface and incorporate feedback or bug reports from users, customer support?
How do we get that feedback from customer support?
Yeah, exactly. Like, how does your QA team incorporate this feedback from users?
Yeah. So each of us are in a team that we specialize in certain features, and and customer support knows which QA is on what team or feature, and sometimes they'll see some issues reported in from a feature that we own, and they'll message us and like, hey, I've heard some reports about this. Did you guys recently change something? And like when we'll respond if we did or didn't, and then we'll investigate for our team and try to debug and reproduce if there was a specific issue. And if it's something that we can narrow down, we definitely will message our developers and our team about like, hey, this feature isn't working as we expected. This is what they're seeing on production. And it definitely starts with that relationship between customer support and QA first before we send it off to development and product, just to make sure that it's validated what the issue is.
Got it. And I think I know the answer, but there was a question coming from the audience as well. Like, is there a person or a team specifically focused on bug fixes in your team, or not?
It depends on the team. Most of the time we have an on-call engineer for the week, and they tend to look at issues that come in or any bug fixes or hot fixes that need to be done. And on-call is very good about that because we lighten the load for whoever is the on-call engineer, and they have time to look at some of those customer issues or bugs that need to be fixed and get shipped.
Okay, so there's someone on call all the time. So we do the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, so there's always someone on call, like two engineers from the team. So as we run a lot of our cycles during the weekends at Testlio, then yeah, there's always QA managers and testers online, and that's where most of the issues happen as well. So there's always someone on call, and like fixing is something.
Yeah. And we, of course, rotate the on-call, and there's an on-call sheet for each member of what team they're a part of.
Yeah, but talking about like user feedback and the issues that are coming in from users, a lot of the feedback comes in from like Play Store and App Store as well. Like, how much do you monitor that type of feedback? And is your support team responsible for that?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if our support team is actually in charge of looking at the feedback from the app or Play Store, but we do have a couple of leads and managers who always like to keep an eye on the feedback and the ratings, and if there's anything that is glaring and a poor review, we definitely would like to look at it and see what's going on.
Yep. Yeah, one of the things that we do at Testlio as well is we actually look into like the user reviews with the testers, and the testers will actually categorize all of the feedback that's coming in from the App Store, for example, and based on that they can categorize it, either it's a bug report or a feature request. Because a lot of the times when a user leaves like a 3-star or 2-star review, it's not because of an issue, it's because of a feature that you're missing or something that you changed in the flow that they don't like, right? So it's always good to track that kind of information as well.
Yeah, we turned that into an experiment.
Yeah, lots of interesting things happening. Yeah, and I think one of the bigger topics that we haven't touched yet, and we have 15 minutes to go. I would love to have more insights into automation at Lyft. So can you share like how does automation fit into like the overall picture, and what works, what doesn't?
Yeah, scaling is hard for automation, as we've discovered at Lyft.
Yeah.
We used to have, we used to use Appium with Python, and that was working well when we were using only one app per platform. But once we wanted to have the driver app, it came to a point where we knew this wasn't going to scale anymore, and we really wanted to also move to a point where developers could be able to write their own tests as they develop. And part of the plan with the driver app was to move to native frameworks for iOS and Android respectively, and build that at the same time as we're moving and building driver app. But just there's also that upfront cost of when you get rid of one framework and all the automation goes with that, then you're back to all manual testing. And Tesla was definitely a big help there in making sure everything was tested before that. But now, we do, what's nice about building native frameworks is that we are getting developer help to set that up and a coding for what will work, and enabling a way where not only will developers be able to write their tests, but QA could also help as well. We're very big on using page objects. We like readable tests and clean reporting. If you don't have a good report, then no one's going to look at what failed or what passed. And you definitely want to create something that is, most importantly, like catches everything, but is very usable for everyone.
Got it. Okay, I'm going to take a couple of questions from the audience related to automation, and actually we're putting up another poll as well, so you might see another poll popping up in the window. So, but yeah, what percentage of Lyft's regression is automated? Can you elaborate on that as well?
Wait, I'm sorry, what was the question?
What percentage of Lyft's regression is automated?
It's a small number right now. Since we just released the driver app, I would say about 10% for Android on regression right now. But our goal for Q3 is to increase that.
Got it. And I think you already answered that in terms of like what automation framework you're using for iOS and Android, and it was Appium, right? And with Python.
We used to use Appium. So for native, we're using Espresso for Android, and for iOS, they're building, I don't know what it's called, but it's a framework in Swift.
Oh, got it. And what are the kind of tools used in testing, and how do you stay up with the sprint demands in terms of automation? I think here's a good question in terms of we can elaborate more on when you're going the way of automation. Then one of the challenges that you're running into usually is the fact that you will start maintaining a lot of the older tests, because if something changes in your app, then you have to maintain the older ones, right? So you can't write actually new tests. So how is it in terms of in your organization?
Maintaining tests was a huge challenge, especially with weekly releases, and there was a big imbalance on new feature testing versus automation and just maintaining those tests. And that's where you kind of have to evaluate the cost and benefit of having designated automation engineers. And I think that's where a lot of folks like to use software engineer and test, where they focus on maintaining the tests, creating new ones, and then you have other QAs who focus on just feature testing and making sure the releases are still on track every week. And so you kind of have to see what best works for the company. It's definitely a challenge, and you have to see and evaluate what works and what doesn't frequently, and if something's not working, change it. You have to look at routine. And I think for my experience, if you can have the automation engineers undisturbed and they can just focus on writing tests, that works much more efficiently than expecting to do feature testing and automating within a release schedule.
Got it. And do you like track the return on investment on automation as well somehow, or not?
I don't know if we necessarily have those numbers just yet. I know what's nice is that when we do have automation, we like to run it at least against the latest. If we're planning to do an alpha release, we definitely want to have automation to run against master first before we cut the branch. And if any tests fail from automation on that, we don't release an alpha build, which gives a red flag that there's something broken on master, and our dev are able to look at it and fix it, and we can run the test again and then maybe ship alpha later that day. So I mean, it definitely is you can almost get to that continuous testing with automation, and you can definitely find bugs much faster using that compared to manual testing.
Got it. I have another interesting question coming from the audience. It's if thousands of users are facing a bug, then do you fix it right away and ship it in between your weekly releases, or you wait until the weekly release?
Yeah, so it depends on the number of folks complaining about the issue. We have hotfixed before, and that's what we'll do if it's a high impact bug. And if it's low impact, we evaluate the cost, and we discover that it's more efficient to ship the next release rather than hot fixing. We'll do that. But if it's thousands of users, most likely we'll hot fix, from what it sounds like. Or if we do catch it right before releasing, we'll cancel the release and just wait for the following release with the fix in it.
Got it. Very, very exciting. So, and how are you measuring your QA efforts overall at Lyft? Is there any recommendations?
That's a good question.
To all of us?
Yeah. Usually in terms of measuring how good QA does, we try not to rely on bug reports or necessarily production per se, but we do look to see how often developers rely on QA for testing, or instead of trying to test themselves or merge something and hope for the best. If everyone, our process here, everyone's very big on like, did this get QA'd? Did your change or feature get QA'd? And they always look to us as to verify that everything looks good and clean before shipping. Or if folks end up shipping something without any testing, they feel guilty. And so I think that's a good measurement for how well or how we are measured at Lyft for QA.
Got it. And I think my last question today would be that I like to ask from everyone is, what makes a great QA in your opinion?
Passion, always looking to break stuff, not being afraid to see how far you can take it in terms of testing the app, and thinking outside the box, and definitely listening to users and consider and don't hesitate to think about the range of how you could use something. Everyone thinks differently. Everyone tries to take advantage, and yeah, just don't be afraid to I would say what makes a good QA is not being afraid to see how far you can take things in terms of testing an app or testing something that you're in charge of.
Got it. Very, very cool. And I think we don't have any, I can find some other questions. We have a lot of questions, so we're probably going to answer a lot of them with you, Heather, separately, so we can send it out to the audience because we have a lot of questions. So it would be good to. Oh, there's one interesting question that I might like to ask you right now is, what's the ratio like in terms of the designers, QA team, and developers at Lyft?
Yeah, we have the most developers. UX, we're looking to increase our UX team. It is on the smaller side right now just because we have been hiring developers the fastest. And QA, I think QA is still the smallest number compared to UX and Dev, and we're still increasing in that too. And UX is a bit of a different process just because they have to have mock-ups and designs set out well before developers start developing, because product wants to look at it, legal wants to give the sign-off, and so that's a good question in terms of UX definitely has a different sprint flow compared to the rest of the engineering org.
Got it. And one of the things that you mentioned earlier as well was that you have like these knowledge sharing lessons at Lyft as well. Like, is there any sharing session between like the automation team and manual team as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we
like
do.
How do those look like, for example?
Well, we have our not weekly, we have bi-weekly QA meetings, and that's where we have the release team and the automation team come in and kind of give status updates. And also some of the automation engineers are part of other teams that work with manual QA and developers. And so just also verify like we have all the element IDs in place and things like that. And for any big changes, like they'll give updates in that QA meeting, and we can say like, oh, can you show us how this works? Can you give a demo? They'll also send an email sometimes, and with slides, we've had that in the past. So everyone is very friendly about however you need to use automation, there's a way for you to find out.
That's always good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sharing knowledge, sharing is caring. I think that's it from my side. Are there any other things that you would like do's or don'ts for other QA organizations here at the webinar?
I know getting the voice out there is a challenge in terms of testing, but keep pushing, keep persevering, and definitely the more you can make the cost and benefits of having testing, and in terms of how much this one bug fix could help in terms of your app, if you can make it more measurable, the more open folks are, and you can get it to a point where you have something that is easy for folks to follow along, and people listen to numbers and charts. And so if you can make your efforts into a measurable, solid metric, it's much easier to prove your point as well.
Got it. Awesome.
And persevere. Don't say no.
Absolutely. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me or us today.
Thank you.
It was a lot of questions, so we're definitely going to follow up with you and follow up with the audience as well, so we can send them some information. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us in this morning or evening, or wherever you are. Yeah, we'll hope to see you soon.
Cool. Thanks, Crystal.
Thanks, Heather. Bye.
Bye.